Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Today we're diving into some of the most jaw-dropping stories from the AITA subreddit. If you enjoy hearing real-life drama mixed with tough moral questions, stick around and maybe hit that like and subscribe button so you won't miss the next one. Story 1. Am I the asshole for threatening to sue both the school and the family of my daughter's bully? I'm a 30-year-old dad, married to my husband who's 33, and we have an 11-year-old daughter. Lately, she's been dealing with bullying at school that's gone way beyond name-calling. At first, it was just the occasional mean remark, but then it escalated. The kids found out she was adopted, something we've always celebrated as part of her story, and started saying awful things like, "Your real mom didn't want you," and "You're a reject." None of it's true. Her birth mother loved her so much that she made the ultimate sacrifice so our daughter could have a future. But the cruelty didn't stop at words. Just a few days ago, my daughter came home in tears. While she was in class, some kids had cut 2 inches off her ponytail, laughing and calling her names while she sat there shocked and humiliated. Now they follow her in the hallways, mocking her daily. My husband and I have reported this to the school more times than I can count. Emails, phone calls, even face-to-face meetings with teachers and the principal. Every time we got vague promises that they'd look into it. Nothing changed. Meanwhile, my daughter's mental health has taken a serious hit. She's anxious, having trouble sleeping, and begging us not to send her to school. Finally, we'd had enough. We contacted a lawyer to explore legal action against both the school and the family of the bully. And surprise, only after they found out we were considering suing did the school finally react. They suddenly called to say they'd moved the bully to another class and had a talk with her. The bully's parents reached out too, saying they'd speak to their daughter and promising the bullying would stop. But here's the thing, I don't trust them. It feels like they're just trying to avoid legal trouble, and once the pressure's off, everything will go back to how it was. My family thinks I should give them a chance now that they've finally taken action, but to me it feels like too little, too late. This isn't the first time they've said they'd handle it, and I'm done gambling with my daughter's well-being. I know some people might say moving forward with legal action now is extreme, but we tried the be patient approach for months. The school had endless chances to protect her, and they failed every single time. If we hadn't involved a lawyer, nothing would have changed, and that says a lot about their priorities. At the end of the day, my job is to protect my kid, and if that means taking legal steps to make sure she's safe and gets the respect she deserves, then so be it. Maybe suing will send a message to both the school and the bully's family that their inaction and behavior have real consequences. That brings us to our next story. Am I the asshole for refusing to back down, even now that they claim they're handling it? Story 2. Am I the asshole for uninviting 25 family members to my wedding 6 weeks before the big day? I've been planning my dream Halloween wedding for 2 years. The venue I wanted had a wait list, so locking it down was a huge win. Everything was set, decorations, costumes, menu, until my mom and grandma suddenly decided my wedding was satanic and demanded I make last-minute changes. I told them a firm no. They'd had 2 years to object, and this was the first time they were bringing it up. Instead of dropping it, my mom's side of the family decided to turn it into some weird power struggle. They started making comments about not coming to the wedding at all. At first, I thought it was just talk, but then more and more of them jumped on board, supporting my mom and grandma's stance. Well, I wasn't about to let them steamroll me 6 weeks before my own wedding, so I canceled the invitations for every single person who complained or took my mom's side. That totaled 25 people, including one of my bridesmaids, my sister, who decided to step down in solidarity with them. I immediately replaced her and sent updated QR codes for the guests who were still invited. The venue will only let in people whose names are on the final list. Of course, it didn't take long for the backlash to start. My aunt, one of the uninvited, called to tell me I was overreacting. She said people are allowed to disagree with me and that doesn't mean I should take away their invitation, especially after they'd made travel plans. I told her they had 2 years to voice their opinions respectfully, but pulling this stunt 6 weeks before the wedding was just plain disrespectful. Actions have consequences. I'm not the kind of person who's going to be bullied into changing my own wedding to suit other people's tastes, especially when it's something as harmless as a Halloween theme. The whole point of the day is to celebrate my relationship with my fiancé, not cater to my relatives' opinions about what's appropriate. They made their choice, and I made mine. Now, some family members are acting shocked, like I'm the villain for enforcing boundaries. But honestly, if they can't support me on one of the happiest days of my life just because it doesn't fit their personal vision, then I don't want them there at all. I'd rather celebrate with people who are happy for me than with people who are judging every detail. So yeah, maybe I nuked 25 invitations less than 2 months out, but it's my wedding, my rules. And if that means a smaller guest list with better vibes, I'm completely fine with that. That brings us to our next story. Am I the asshole for refusing to let my family hijack my wedding over something so petty? Story 3. Am I the asshole for making a seat swapper cry on a plane? I had just boarded my flight, settled into my economy plus seat, and was looking forward to the extra legroom I had paid for. A woman approached me and asked if I'd switch seats with her so she could sit next to her 9-year-old son. Her offer? Seat 32B, smack in the middle of the back row. I calmly asked her how much cash she had to reimburse me for the upgrade. She looked offended and said I was cruel for leaving her son, who has anxiety, to sit alone. I pointed out that if she really cared about his comfort, she could offer her own economy plus seat to the person sitting next to him and take the back row herself. Her response? She needed the legroom. At that point, I told her straight up that it seemed like she cared more about her own comfort than her son's well-being. That's when the waterworks started. Loud, dramatic crying with a chorus of "How could you?" thrown in for good measure. People turned to look, but I stayed put. About 10 minutes later, a smiling man came down the aisle and happily slid into the seat beside me, clearly pleased with his upgrade. When I told my partner what happened, he said I was in the wrong for questioning her parenting in front of others and making her cry. But from my perspective, I wasn't trying to be cruel, I just didn't want to give up a seat I'd paid extra for, especially when she had other options. If her son's anxiety was truly the priority, she could have easily taken the less comfortable seat herself. Flying can already be stressful enough without getting guilt-tripped into downgrading your seat because someone else didn't plan ahead. I sympathize with her wanting to sit with her child, but it's not my responsibility to make that happen at my expense. If the roles were reversed, I'd take the worst seat so my kid could have the better one, not expect a stranger to give theirs up for free. I guess the real question is, was I wrong for standing my ground and pointing out the obvious flaw in her logic? That brings us to our next story. Am I the asshole for not giving up my paid seat and calling out a parent in public? Story 4. Am I the asshole for not telling a man that the research he was mansplaining to me was actually my own? I'm a 33-year-old woman working in a very small, highly specialized, male-dominated field of law. It's such a niche area that meeting someone else in it is rare. I graduated 9 years ago, have been both a lawyer and a researcher, and while my work is respected in the field, it's not something the general public would recognize. Recently, I went to a bar with friends, and they introduced me to one of their friends who works in the same field as me, though he's a legal advisor rather than a lawyer. I was genuinely excited to meet him, so naturally, we started talking shop. We ended up discussing a topic we had different opinions on. I explained my point of view, and he shot back that my opinion was based on nothing, whereas his was backed by the work of a professional. Then he started explaining that professional's research to me in detail, completely unaware that I was the author. He misrepresented my arguments, skipped over important points, and talked to me like I was a first-year law student. I asked if he was sure that's what the author meant. He confidently replied, "It's pretty simple, actually," and kept going for a solid 20 minutes. I didn't correct him because honestly, it was kind of funny watching him be so confidently wrong. Later, as we were all getting ready to leave, I told him casually, "By the way, that research you've been quoting? I wrote it, and I think you misunderstood my points." His reaction was instant anger. He accused me of manipulating him to humiliate him, claimed I should have said so at the start, and stormed off. The next morning, my friends texted saying I'd caused drama and tension and that I could have been nicer. But here's the thing. It wasn't like I embarrassed him in front of a group. The conversation about our work was just between the two of us, both times. No audience, no public takedown. The only thing humiliating here is that a woman knew more than him, and I think that's what really set him off. I guess I could have corrected him sooner to spare his feelings. But should I really have to tiptoe around someone's ego when they're talking down to me about my own work? That brings us to our next story. Am I the asshole for letting a mansplainer dig his own hole before telling him it was my research? Story 5. Am I the asshole for declining to fix the errors in a blanket I crocheted and taking it back instead? I crocheted a blanket for my sister-in-law, Amanda. She requested certain colors, and since I didn't have any other big projects lined up, I was happy to make it for her. Most of the yarn I needed was already in my stash, so it worked out perfectly. When I gave it to her last weekend, she seemed excited, at first. She started inspecting it closely, and I assumed she was just curious about how it was made since she doesn't crochet. But then she started pointing out mistakes. She noted that in one section, I'd done 1 row of striping instead of 3, and in another, I'd accidentally switched colors, which threw off the pattern she thought I was following. She handed it back to me and said she loved the progress and couldn't wait to see the finished product. I told her it was finished. She looked genuinely surprised and said, "It's not done until it's perfect. You can easily go back and fix those mistakes." That's when I had to stop and process what she was asking. Anyone who crochets knows that fixing a mistake on, say, row 36 of a 115-row blanket isn't easy. It's essentially starting over. I explained that I'd put a lot of time and love into it, and it was a gift made for her, not a commission. She said she appreciated that, but she wouldn't be able to enjoy it knowing it had errors. At that point, I told her that if she didn't want it as is, I'd just keep it for myself. She seemed shocked and protested that she did want it. Just my best work, not something half-assed. That was insulting. Crocheting an entire blanket by hand with only minor imperfections is far from half-assing anything. So I took it back. She got upset and said I was being ridiculous, that it wouldn't take long to fix. But to me, it wasn't just about the blanket. It was about her attitude. This was a gift, not a custom order she paid for. If the only way she could appreciate it was for it to be perfect in her eyes, then I'd rather keep it for someone who would love it as it is. Now she's mad, my husband's caught in the middle, and I'm wondering if I overreacted by refusing to correct the blanket and just taking it back. That brings us to our next story. Am I the asshole for taking back a handmade gift instead of redoing it to meet someone else's idea of perfection? Story 6. Am I the asshole for losing my temper when my daughter-in-law threw away the cookies I baked? I love baking, especially sweet treats for my family. My daughter-in-law, Emily, is very health conscious. Organic foods, low sugar, no processed snacks, and she's even stricter now that she and my son have 2 kids. Whenever the grandkids visit, I like to have cookies or something special for them, but every time Emily comments about how unhealthy they are. A few months back, this turned into a full-blown argument. I reminded her everything I make is homemade, not store-bought junk, and it's not like I'm feeding them cookies for every meal. My son stepped in and we compromised. When the kids visit, they can have 1 cookie. That worked fine, until yesterday. The kids came over in the evening and I baked a fresh batch of cookies. They were cooling on the rack when Emily and my son arrived. We all chatted for a while, then at some point Emily slipped into the kitchen. Next thing I know, she's tossed every single cookie into the trash. When I asked why, she said she was doing me a favor because they were unhealthy. I was stunned. I told her she had no right to throw away something I worked hard to make, especially food meant for the kids. She insisted she was helping. That's when I lost my temper and yelled at her. My son tried to calm things down, but I was furious. Emily left the room in tears, and now my son says I overreacted and owe her an apology. I told him flat out I won't apologize, and until this is resolved, I won't be babysitting the kids. Throwing away my baking felt like a total disrespect, not just for the effort, but for me as a person. It's one thing to have different parenting philosophies, but it's another to come into my home and toss my food like it's garbage. So here I am, wondering if my anger was justified or if I went too far. That's the last story for today. Am I the asshole for yelling at my daughter-in-law after she threw away the cookies I baked? Thanks so much for listening all the way through. If you enjoyed these AITA stories, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss what's coming next. See you next time!